So recognizing that, I think Chris said there are 36 states represented here, 3 foreign countries. Not all of you are familiar with Maryland. Maryland is a fairly small state, but a very populous state. 90% of our population lives within urban areas. We have one of the environmental treasures of the United States that is largely located within Maryland in the Chesapeake Bay. It actually has enabled us, I think, to be doing a lot more than some other states in terms of having the support from our citizens because they have such a strong environmental ethic because of the significance of the Chesapeake Bay and recognition of the Chesapeake Bay and the challenges that we have associated with the Chesapeake Bay from an environmental perspective. So we have had pretty broad support in terms of really reaching out and going much further than many other states, state DOTs have in terms of some of the kinds of environmental approaches that we have taken. We've recognized in Maryland that one of our most significant challenges that we have, particularly as related to the Chesapeake Bay, is the fragmentation of many of our environmental systems, and that we need to be better understanding what that fragmentation is, what the challenges are, and how we can be trying to both address the trends as well as try to undo some of the impacts that we've had as well. So from a green infrastructure assessment standpoint, we worked very closely with our Environmental Resource Agency partners in terms of developing a GIS system that we use as well as they use in terms of both identifying and prioritizing resources and looking at them from a conservation standpoint, from a restoration standpoint, and also as we interact with development activity that is taking place and trying to do better planning for land use development, not just transportation planning itself and its interaction with the environmental resources that we're trying to protect. We have developed a green infrastructure network on a statewide basis. This is a map that shows some of the resources from a statewide perspective. We'll drill down a little bit in terms of a specific case study in a second. But you can see we've highlighted what is protected as well as what is unprotected. And we've recognized that the unprotected areas, especially where we have threats associated with them, is where together we need to be concentrating a lot of our resources in terms of protection from an environmental perspective. We've taken a hubs and corridors approach in terms of recognizing that we not just have significant resources at a hub or a specific location, but also corridors from an environmental perspective that connect those hubs as well. We've particularly focused on where do we have some challenges, where do we have some gaps from an environmental resource perspective that we need to be concentrating where our money gets spent in terms of trying to protect those particular gaps, as well as where we've had degradation and some of the restoration money that we can be putting in from a mitigation standpoint can give us the greatest benefit from, for example, a stream valley perspective as opposed to just trying to mitigate at the particular local level. Okay, now we worked in partnership with the Conservation Fund in taking this approach and applying it specifically to a project that we had along the US 301 corridor in southern Maryland, just southeast of Washington, D.C. You can see here, this is that star that was just south of Washington, D.C. represents the area that we're talking about. US 301 is the main roadway that goes through the center of this area. We have mapped the environmental resources, working together with environmental resource agencies throughout the corridor. And then that has guided us a great deal, both in terms of trying to look at various transportation corridors within the larger area itself, as well and guiding us in terms of the alignments of those corridors, what needs to be protected, as well as providing us with information on where some of the threats are that we need to be trying to protect within that area. Working together with the Conservation Fund again, we were trying to prioritize both the activities that we had, conservation versus restoration versus management, and the natural resources. You can see the full range of natural resources, the relative priorities of those resources from a protection standpoint within the corridor itself. And you'll be hearing a lot more about details of this later in the conference. I'm just going through from more of a strategic perspective right now so that you start to get the sense of how we're using some of these tools and approaches. Traditionally, we had gone through and identified mitigation opportunities together with resource agencies, and we rank-based those projects, and it was on a project level. From a resource protection standpoint, from a resource opportunity perspective, as opposed to really looking at this environmental value perspective and trying to figure out where do we get the greatest return on our investment from an environmental value perspective. And by trying to optimize the investment in the dollars that we're making in terms of environmental protection, we've actually ended up determining that we're able to do more from an overall perspective in terms of benefits from an environmental perspective than the traditional rank-based approach that we've been taking. Okay, now, at a national level, there's national level research under the sponsorship of the National Academies of Sciences Transportation Research Board that is taking this approach and trying to develop national tools to be guiding both transportation agencies as well as environmental resource agencies at looking at the more holistic environmental systems, protection perspective, as well as opportunities perspective. So the kinds of tools that we've just talked about for the US 301 corridor are being developed under the auspices of the Transportation Research Board as part of research funding that's been made available by Congress as well. There are two projects that are being sponsored under this Strategic Highway Research Program research that is underway right now. The first of these is development of regional ecosystems framework and processes and making the case from a business perspective in terms of why this type of approach should be taken by state departments of transportation and resource agencies as well, and how it is connected into the NEPA process, the 404 permitting process, and the Section 7 process as well. The second part of this research is really developing tools that enable us to better quantify what the credits are that transportation agencies should be receiving for the type of mitigation and restoration and protection investments that they're making as well. I'm expecting that we will have outcomes from that research coming out within the next several months, and I would commend all of you to be really looking at the outcome of that particular research. Within Maryland, we're working together with the EPA Region 3 office and our Department of Natural Resources in terms of developing a watershed resources registry. We've done a lot of mapping, as you can see before, in terms of the resources themselves, what the significance of the resources are. The approach that's being taken here is to be looking at the opportunities that we have in terms of either protection or restoration or enhancement to those resources, and developing a registry or an inventory of the types of projects that whether it's developers or transportation agencies or local governments will have available to them, what kinds of projects the resource agencies end up saying are high priorities in terms of protection of the resources that we all are trying to protect. And this particularly, by spending the money and the time in developing that, it actually ends up saving agencies like ours in terms of having that information available to us as well, so it can be very cost effective to us. Within Maryland itself, as well as within the 6 states of the Chesapeake Bay watershed, EPA is working with each of the states right now and developing total maximum daily loads for the Chesapeake Bay itself. We have water improvement plans that have been developed that have tremendous burden that is placed on governmental agencies at both the state and local level in terms of water quality improvements that are going to be necessary. And that water resources registry is going to be an extremely valuable tool to us as we again look at what are the opportunities that give us the greatest return on investment for the money that we're spending on trying to make water quality improvements for the Chesapeake Bay. Okay, so why use these tools? I guess my response to that is I don't think we can afford not to. Again, with scarce resources that are available, the expectation of agencies such as mine is that we're going to be wise stewards of the dollars that we are investing, that we get greatest value for the dollars that we are spending, regardless of whether it is dollars that are being spent on the environment or whether it's on transportation improvement or traffic operations or whatever. And the green infrastructure tools that are available to us, taking the broader green infrastructure approach, I am convinced will end up giving us that greatest value, environmental value for the dollars that we have spent and invested. And thank you very much.